For all the bloodshed we had seen, I believe that something was born that day that will eclipse any of their military victories. A true union between our countries. If I leave no other legacy than having kept this union intact for a few more years, I shall have served my people well.
The Jadwiga campaign from Age of Empires 2 Dawn of the Dukes is the story of a rare female ruler in the medieval period, forced upon the Polish throne at a young age. It's also the story of the union of Poland and Lithuania, two kingdoms becoming one. In this series we will take a look behind the scenes and show not just how this campaign was made, but also how you can create your own campaigns in Age of Empires 2. Each episode will focus on one part of the design process and show the creation of one of the scenarios from the Jadwiga campaign. Welcome to Making Jadwiga. When designing an official campaign for Age of Empires 2, the first step for the level design team is to choose what story we're going to tell. After researching dozens of interesting potential campaign protagonists, we then pick a single one out of many good options. At first glance, Jadwiga may not seem like an obvious choice. She was no military commander, and she worked primarily to build and maintain the peace and prosperity in her realm. She was no conqueror, and Age of Empires is, after all, a game about conquest.
Age of Empires 2 is about empire building, combat and conquest.
Yet in many ways she was a perfect choice. Hers was a unique story, and making her the narrator would allow us to tell not only her story, but those of two other prominent figures of that time. Her husband Jadwiga and his cousin Vytautas the Great. When you're designing your own scenarios, you can pick any character you like from history that you find interesting, and turn their story into a campaign. Or you can just ignore history entirely and use the game to create a world of your own, with new and unique countries, histories and characters. In fact, I would say that most of the best custom campaigns out there are based not on history, but on fantasy. To give just a few examples, there's Julio, which is inspired by Greek tragedies such as Oedipus Rex, and set in a fantasy world based on medieval Germany. You have Sabato Returns, an entire campaign packed into a single scenario, where you can pick one of 3 completely unique story paths. And if you want to go really out there, you have Wolfcastle 2 The Silence of the Clowns, which is set in the modern world and puts you in the shoes of a secret agent, complete with tanks, explosions and evil plots. Your options are essentially limitless, and just because the official campaigns are based on history does not mean that yours have to be. Then, once you've picked your protagonists, it's time to start making your campaign. The Jadwiga campaign begins with the matter of the crown. It deals with her rise to power as a child, and the civil war that raged in Poland at the time of her coronation. We open with a fixed force mission, where Jadwiga and her bodyguard must rush to Krakow while being pursued by Polish rebels. After this, the scenario becomes a classic build and destroy mission, where you build up a base and take on the rebellious dukes, and their allies, the Teutonic Order. When designing this scenario, the first thing I wanted to get right was the city of Krakow. Since I was using a small map, it meant that the city had to be very compact, and because it would remain a neutral, immobile player, I was able to create a more intricate design than I would have for an active player. As you can see, the Polish castle and wonder had not yet been added to the game. This was in early March of this year, and the design of the Polish civilization was still a work in progress. So instead, the Polish civ this time was using the Lithuanian build set. Once I was satisfied with the design of Krakow, I moved on to the enemy bases. The city of Opole in the west and the Mazovian army base to the north. Opole is also a compact design, but it needed to be spacious enough so that the AI's units wouldn't get stuck. pole is set between two small mountain ranges, and there are two ways to enter the city. This gives the player multiple angles of attack, as well as the option of attacking from two directions at once if you turn the other AI into an ally. The Mazovian base, on the other hand, is a purely military base, with temporary palisades and wooden towers, so it naturally became a more open design. As you can see, I was using these sharp-edged tents for the design, which never made it into the final version that's now in the game. I didn't realize at the time that these were Asian tents, which do not make that much sense in a European setting. Once all of these set pieces were done, I moved on to designing the player's base outside of Krakow, as well as this stretch of sand nearby, which is supposed to be the Bledov Desert, which is a desert that exists in reality and sits in the middle of Poland. Lastly, I designed the Siege Engineer's camp, the blocked mountain path where Jadwiga appears at the end, and all the little pockets of nature in between the major areas. Out of all the scenarios in the Jadwiga campaign, this one, as well as scenario 6, which we will get to later, changed the most between the initial script and the final product. In the original script, Jadwiga's coronation would have been an in-game cutscene, and the opening fixed force section was supposed to be longer. It would have included a mission where you played as Krakow's defensive forces, trying to stop Prince William of Habsburg from reaching the city. In the end, these parts were scrapped, but much of it, including William's arrival in Krakow, was moved to the aftermath narration to ensure that we could still include this part of the story. This is an example of where official campaigns sometimes need to make cuts for efficiency, which would not have been necessary in a custom campaign. When you're designing your own scenarios, you can make the story as intricate as you like, and include as many cutscenes as you need to portray it. The Matter of the Crown is in many ways a simple scenario, with a focus on build and destroy gameplay, and it's meant as an introduction both to the campaign and the Polish civilization with all of its quirks. Next time we will take a look at Star of the Poles, which has more complex gameplay, and which introduces Jadwiga as an active protagonist as she grows older and begins to take on the role of Queen of Two Kingdoms.